Did the White House just cross the line? That's the question Rep. Jasmine Crockett raised on October 2nd when she suggested that the administration's messaging about the ongoing government shutdown might actually violate the Hatch Act. Now, if you're not familiar with it, the Hatch Act is one of those rules that doesn't usually make front-page headlines, but when it does, it grabs attention because it goes straight to the issue of where governing ends and campaigning begins. And before we get rolling, let me quickly say this. Make sure you're subscribed to the Second to None podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Podbean, hit that follow button so you don't miss these breakdowns of politics, law, and the big stories shaping our country. So let's rewind for a second. The Hatch Act has been around since 1939. At its core, it says federal employees can't use their official positions to engage in partisan politics. Your job as a government worker is to serve the people, not campaign for your party. That means no using taxpayer time or taxpayer resources to push a political message. Pretty straightforward on paper. But here's the thing. Politics has a way of creeping into everything, and sometimes just explaining what's happening in government can come across as partisan. That's where it gets messy. What Crockett was pointing to was the language the White House was using to explain the shutdown. In her view, it wasn't just, here's what's happening, it was, here's who to blame. And if those official messages are singling out Republicans for causing the shutdown, well, that starts to look like partisan communication. Now, you might be thinking, don't people deserve to know why the shutdown is happening? And yes, they do. But the question is, how do you frame that explanation? If the White House says the shutdown is due to a funding impasse in Congress, that's neutral. If they say Republicans in Congress caused this shutdown, that sounds like spin. Same event, different framing. This isn't the first time we've been here. The Hatch Act has tripped up administrations from both parties. Kellyanne Conway, under Trump, was accused repeatedly of blurring the lines. Under Obama, cabinet officials got warnings for political comments during official travel. Even during the Bush years, there were accusations of campaign strategy mixing with government operations. And here's the kicker. Most of the time, the penalties are light. A warning, a reprimand, maybe a recommendation for removal in rare cases. But the headline damage, that sticks. Once you hear Hatch Act violation, it leaves a mark. And this is why it matters. During a shutdown, people are already stressed. Federal workers wonder about their paychecks. Families wonder about services being delayed or cut off. The last thing people want to feel is that the government is playing politics with their lives. When official communication starts to sound like campaign messaging, it erodes trust. And trust is already in short supply. So if you're with me so far, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. We dive into stories like this every single week, breaking down not just what happened, but why it matters and how it impacts you. So here's where I land. I don't think this accusation is going to lead to some major consequence. Historically, Hatch Act enforcement has been inconsistent, and in today's polarized environment, even neutral explanations are going to sound partisan to somebody. That's just the reality. But I also think Crockett was right to raise the issue. Oversight matters. If nobody calls out possible violations, the guardrails get weaker. The Hatch Act is supposed to keep politics and governing separate, even if it's not always perfectly enforced. The bigger question for me is about communication. Do we want our leaders to spell out clearly who's responsible when things break down, even if it sounds partisan? Or do we want them to stick with neutral language that doesn't ruffle feathers, even if it feels watered down? Because those two goals, clarity and neutrality, don't always line up. At the end of the day, this whole debate is less about one accusation and more about how our government talks to us in moments of crisis. That's what shapes trust, and that's what shapes perception. So, what do you think? Did the White House cross the line here, or was this just politics as usual? Was Crockett making a fair call-out, or was this more about theatrics during a shutdown? I'd love to hear your take. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on Podbean, or hit me up on social media. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for spending some time with me. And don't forget, subscribe, follow, and share this podcast so more people can join the conversation. Stay sharp, stay informed, and as always, remember, you're second to none.